Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall, psychic, all the way from the Gold Coast here in Australia. Hope you're having an absolutely fantastic week wherever you are in this amazing planet of ours. I know the world seems to be constantly shifting and changing, and many of us as we get older would sort of like things to just stand still for a little while and be able to sort of just catch our breath and catch up with technology and all the changes that are happening in the world. But that's the amazing part about being alive and being in this amazing planet, isn't it? That it is always constantly changing. There's always new things to sort of explore and look at and travel and see and whatever. So this week, the Simply Tarot card of the week is the Magician. So this is the card of the element of surprise. Now, surprise is one of those very ambiguous sort of words. Some people look at the word surprise and say, great, that means something amazing is going to happen. Someone else will sort of say, "Oh, I don't like that word. Surprises usually mean that, you've been caught off guard. Things aren't going quite the way that you would like them to." So it can be good or bad. To me, it's sort of saying to you that you have all the tools in your toolkit, that you can create magic, that you can create something out of nothing in your life. If you really want to sort of focus on what is going on in your life, that you can create your own surprise, you can create your own magic. And, whether that's a good or bad situation, I mean, depends on where you are in your life at this point in time. I personally see this card when it comes out in a reading as, oh, yippee doodle dandy, we're going to get some change, whether or not it may be what we want, but there's a breakthrough. Things are moving, things are changing, things aren't static anymore, things aren't stuck. So sometimes, to get out of a stuck situation, it may not necessarily be to our liking, but overall, in the bigger scheme of things, it ends up being to our liking because it clears the cobwebs out of everything, clears everything away so that we can start to get some massive changes or some movement in the camp, as I like to call it. And it's a good card. I like the Magician. It's a very positive sort of card to me, that we're breaking up things that are going on in our lives. So we're going to move on to the astrological section of the chart now. Now, it's really sort of interesting because even though we're in the Gemini time, things are starting to break up a little bit and starting to disperse a little bit, which is good because everything's been so concentrated for so long that we haven't really had a lot of diversity in the chart. So things are starting to sort of pull apart a little bit, like a pull apart, tart, and that's good. So um, we've still got the sun sitting in Gemini. So happy birthday to all the Geminis. Now I'm going to sort of talk about now the Gemini section of the chart. Now this will affect Geminis, Libra, and Aquarius. And the opposite side of Gemini is Sagittarius, but it still flows over in a more watered down version to the other remaining signs in the chart. I don't sit here and break down the 12 signs and what's going to happen in the next week. I look at a Polaroid snapshot of where the planets are sitting just prior to the show. And that's how I bring my astrological report to you each week. So this week we've got Mercury, the planet of communication, which is holding hands or conjunct the sun, which is holding hands or conjunct Venus. Now, they're all sitting in Gemini. Now, when we've got Mercury here, Mercury's at home here. Mercury rules Gemini. So Mercury feels very, very comfortable here. So it's a little bit like sort of Mercury on steroids in a sense that Mercury's going chatter, 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 chatter. There's lots of communication, lots of things to be shared, lots of opinions, lots of people have a lot to say. Whether it's, useful or not is another debate for another day, but there's lots of communication going around at the moment. And that means all forms of communication, whether it's verbally, whether it's text messages, emails, as tuning into social media. They're all forms of communication besides where we get communication or information off other devices like televisions, podcasts, radios, those sort of things. There's lots of communication filtering and floating around at the moment. I'm not saying all of it's truthful, but I'm saying there's a lot of communication out there at the moment. So Mercury is conjunct or holding hands the sun, which is sitting in Gemini, which is asking us to sort of really sort of put our best foot forward, particularly if you're a Gemini. It's the time to shine. It's your birthday time of the year. So really get out there and strut your stuff. So the sun is also conjunct or holding hands with Venus, the planet of love and affection. Now, the Venus is the planet where we look for love, but it's also for the things that we love to do in our lives. So not always when Venus is featured are we all going to race out there and find a new love. It can be bringing things into our life that put a smile on our dial, things that make us feel warm and fuzzy, the things that we love to do. So if you are seeking love, no matter what the 12 star signs you are, let's do it in a general way. If you're seeking love, make sure that you're in places where there is communication, where there is an opportunity to meet people, where you can sort of strut your stuff a little bit, that, you know, you can shine a little bit there, and go to places that are in your local environment. It's not the time to be sort of seeking out love on a long distance trip or an overseas trip. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying you're more likely to find love in your own backyard, so to speak, in your own local environment. So get out and participate in some of the events that might be going on in your local district, particularly over the next week to 10 days. This is the time that if, you know, Cupid's arrows are going to strike, you will meet somebody that has a similar interest to you because you've gone to the same event, or you've gone to the same show, or you've gone to the same movie, or, you know, something that might be happening locally in your district. And don't forget, you know, communication is the key. If you see somebody that's sitting across the table from you, wave, say hello, how are you going? You know, ask them how their day's been. You know, don't be frightened to sort of be the one to initiate the communication, because Gemini is asking us all to be a little bit more communicative. Talk to our fellows that are surrounding us next door, down the street, when we're at the shops or the cinema or wherever we might be. Say hello to somebody. You know, brighten their day. You know, it doesn't always have to lead to romance, but quite often, by you just initiating something like this when the planets are sitting here, can be the start of something absolutely amazing. So we have Uranus, the planet of the unusual and the unexpected, is in the last couple of degrees of being in Taurus. He's been there for quite some time now. So Uranus is really starting to stir things up. Now, this is going to affect Tauruses, Virgos, Capricorns, and the opposite sign of Scorpio. Now, just because Uranus is there is a little bit like the magician card here, doesn't necessarily mean it's all good, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's all bad. Uranus is like the bolt of lightning. He can strike out of nowhere. Now, what Uranus is asking those signs particularly, and then flows on to the others, is make sure what you're standing for, or what you believe in, or what you believe to be correct is correct, not just your own selfish, self absorbed way of looking at things. Now, the Taurian energy is about practicality, it's about what's mine's mine. What's yours is mine also, and it's about money, it's about possessions, it's about the things that you hold dear. Now, this is why I'm giving you a word of caution here. Uranus here will take those things away from you if you are not playing fair, if you are not being decent, if you're not sharing, if you're not considering the other person's point of view. Then sometimes Uranus can come along here and give you a slap over the face and say, well, I'm going to take that off you because you've been too greedy. So you have to be very, very careful here. If you're any one of those signs and you're dealing with something that has a monetary configuration or a monetary attribute to it, make sure that you're not being greedy. Make sure that you are sharing if there's sharing that is required. It's also the time, if you're going to present a business plan to a financial institution looking to gain, you know, funding for something, make sure that you're very clear, you're very concise, you show them how you're going to repay this, that you don't leave any stone unturned. It's a time where everything has to be very thorough, the I's have to be dotted and the T's have to be crossed, and you have to present a very unified front forward. Now, Uranus here in Taurus is actually holding hands or conjuncting Jupiter, the planet of expansion and opportunity, but Jupiter's sitting in Gemini. Now, what this means, if you are doing this for all the right reasons and you haven't been greedy, stubborn, or selfish, and that, you know, you're doing things for the betterment of everybody, then with the conjunction here of Jupiter will expand your world right out. Jupiter then can bring opportunity. Jupiter can bring new ideas to the table, can bring a fresh approach to things. Jupiter can bring a completely different way of looking at things, and expand it right out and hopefully make it better. By the same token, if you've been in that first category where you're being stubborn, pig-headed, not wanting to share, being greedy, being self-absorbed, then Jupiter will come along and say, give you a slap around the face and say, you're being greedy. I'm going to take a number of these things away from you because you are not playing by the rules. So please be very, very careful if you're any one of those signs. So when we're talking about Jupiter here, we're talking about Jupiter in Gemini going to Aquarius, Libra, and the opposite sign of Sagittarius, and then flowing on to the others. But the most important part of this conjunction is the fact that it's Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus. Uranus is leading the charge here. Jupiter is just holding hands and not so much coming along for the ride, but is there and equally as powerful, but we lead with the Taurus energy. So we're going to move on to the part of fortune. Now, the part of fortune is not necessarily a planet. It's part of what's known as the Arabian parts, and it's where we look for improvement and opportunities in our lives. Now, the part of fortune is conjunct or holding hands the moon. Now, the moon, I must caution you, moves very, very quickly, only stays in a sign for 2.5 days. So this is a very fast moving transit or movement of the planet. So we've got the part of fortune, which is showing us where we want to sort of achieve and strive and become the best person that we can be, is currently conjunct or holding hands the moon that's sitting in Leo. Now, the moon in Leo is very powerful. Let me assure you, anybody that has moon in Leo, which I do, you understand how it works. You get out of bed and your hair's not right, you're having a bad hair day, and that's where that phrase comes from. But on a much stronger side, the moon in Leo is very proud, very dramatic, very fixed, very rigid sometimes in the way that they approach things. And anybody that has got that moon in Leo in their chart, or for those people that are a fire sign, and we're talking about Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, and the opposite sign of Aquarius, and then it will filter down to everyone else. It's asking us to make sure that we're not being overly dramatic. That, things that might be on an emotional front at the moment, look at them head on. Don't be the drama queen. Look at it in a very logical, practical, down to earth manner. Yes, you can be strong, you can be determined, you can put a brave front up, you can put forward a good plan, or if you've got to talk about a delicate matter, yes, you can be firm, but make sure that you're not dictatorial. Make sure that you are putting your listening ears on and listening to the other person's point of view as well. That's really, really important. And if it's something of emotional nature, make sure that you tone down the emotion and keep it very fact based if you possibly can. And then, sprinkle in a little bit of that magical emotional energy as well. But do it in a positive sort of way. Try not to be negative or dictatorial or bossy, because sometimes with the moon here, they can be sort of very snappy, snarly, be quite bossy and sort of say, this is the only way because I've said so. We need to make sure that we're considering everybody else in the equation as well. We have Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is coming to the end of its reign in Pisces too. So this is a really nice energy to me, because Neptune rules Pisces. It's sort of like the creative energy has been let out of the bag a little bit. So for anybody, no matter what your star sign, but particularly the water signs, we're talking about Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, and the opposite sign of Virgo, this is a time when you can be really creative. You can really sort of daydream a little bit. Again, make sure that the daydreams or the creativity that you're doing has a positive slant. Don't use it to try and undermine somebody else or to be nasty or to take something from somebody else that's rightfully theirs. Because if you do that, then Neptune here will turn around and say to you, well, that's okay. You can be deceitful. You can be nasty. You can be rude, but just watch what the backlash is going to be for that. There will be consequences. People tend to think of sometimes when a planet's sitting in Pisces, everything's lovey dovey and fairy floss pink. And, it's like the Peter Pan thing. We don't want to grow up. We don't want to look at responsibility. We don't want to do those sort of things because we're too busy in our creative head. Yes, that's very true. But Neptune also has a darker side to him and says to you, if you misbehave, if you do not follow my lead, if you do not understand the energy of how I work, I will turn around and give you a slap in the face, and it'll be one that you don't forget. I will take things from you because you've been destructive, you've been deceitful, you've been nasty in the way that you've approached things. So just because it's sitting in this nice, gentle Pisces sort of energy, don't underestimate the power of the Pisces energy, because it has the power of the previous 11 signs. So it sort of is probably a more powerful placement for a planet to be in than anything. And the fact that Neptune rules Pisces, it gives it that extra boost there that says that, okay, you've got to make sure you behave yourself here. So finally, I want to wrap up with Mars has just moved into Taurus, so Mars will be there for little while, and he's going to stir things up. So Mars moving into Taurus, just moving into Taurus, is saying to us, okay, I'm going to stir up your personal finances, particularly if you're a Taurus, Virgo, or a Capricorn, or the opposite sign of Scorpio. It's saying to you that I have the drive, I have the determination, I have the energy, but make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons. If you are not doing things for the right reasons, then you could have dire consequences on your plate. So again, Mars is the planet of action, opportunity, get off the couch, make things happen, go into things with an enthusiastic manner, but make sure it is for the right reasons. I can't stress that enough. It has to be for the right reasons. So that's where we're going to leave the astrology section for this week. And we're going to take our first caller, which is Francine in Callender in Ontario in Canada. Are you there, Francine?
Oh, I am.
Hello. Do you have a question I can answer for you, please, Francine?
Um, I'm lost, and I don't know what to say. I had to ask for about any questions. Just
Well,
about.
usually people phone into the show, sweetie, because they've got something that's troubling them, bothering them, something they want answered. So that's why I always ask for a direct question, because we have such a limited
Oh,
time.
I do have a question. Is
Hmm.
my daughter, my oldest daughter, going to ever talk to me again?
Okay, that's a really interesting question, Francine. And I'm sorry to hear that you and your daughter are estranged. The first thing that they're showing me from the other side is not just at the moment. She's very, very stubborn. And I think you already know
Yes.
that. But she's one of these children, and I'm going to call her a child because she's your daughter, no matter how old she is,
Yes.
that she tends to think that she's always right. She never ever admits that she could have made a mistake. That's just not on the equation. I'm going to say for
You're
the
right.
moment, no. But I do feel in 2025 she is going to reach out randomly one day, and it'll depend on how you react at whether or not we actually reestablish a connection with your daughter. Now, look, I'm not asking you to forgive everything that's gone down, because sometimes that's just too hard. There's always two sides to a story. And I know she severely
Yeah.
hurt you, and this is the first time, and it probably won't be the last either. But this is one of these very important times where she has really cut you to the quick. Now she's going to reach out to you randomly. I'm going to say probably by phone call. And it's going to be sort of like she's quite aggressive, she's quite angry, and she's blaming you. But at the same time, she's asking for your help. Now, I can't tell you what to
Oh,
do. What I can suggest to you is, okay, as much as your first reaction might be to go to hell, I'm not going to, when you speak to me like that, I'm not going to put myself out. Maybe you have to be the bigger person in this instance and sidestep your own emotion and say, hang on a minute, my child needs me. My child's reached out to me. She's asking for help. Whether I agree with it or not, maybe this is the opening for us to reestablish a connection again. And that's why I'm sort of suggesting to you, I can't tell you what to do, but I can suggest to you that, when she does catch you off guard like this, that your first initial reaction isn't, well, go to hell, is, okay, all right, we can deal with how you spoke to me later. Let's just sort of get this situation sorted, and then we can start to work on the process. It's interesting because they keep saying to me from the other side, she is very much your daughter. So I can only take
yeah.
from that comment from the choir that the two of you are equally as stubborn as each other, and that's not a bad thing. But sometimes we have to lead by example, Mum, of how to sort of be the bigger person in the situation. Look, I know she misses you. She misses you terribly, but her pride will not allow her to pick up that phone or send a message and say, "Hey, Mum, I'm sorry." It's like she chokes
Yeah.
on it. And I think
It's
you
just
can
hard to get a
understand
hold
that.
of her because she has no phone number. She has
No, but she's going to
no
ring
service.
you. Yeah, but she's going to ring you out of the blue. Whether she's bought another cell phone or borrowed a girlfriend's or whatever, it'll be a random thing. They were showing me March on the timeline, but look, timelines from the other side aren't always accurate. But I suppose what I'm supposedly sharing with you is that if you get a random phone call from a phone number you don't know, answer it. If it's your daughter, you know how to handle it. You know what I mean? You can always,
Oh,
let's establish
okay.
a connection with her, then
Yes.
we can deal with her attitude later. But I do think the two of you are going to end up super close. And that's sort of a long way from where you are now, Francine. Look, it's not my place to sit here and say who was right or who was wrong. I'm just going to say you're both at fault. You're both as stubborn as each other. And once we can get over that, I think there's going to be a really beautiful mother daughter relationship there in a more mature way than what there ever was. Your daughter hasn't seen it through mature eyes yet, but she will, and she really, really has missed you. So unfortunately, Francine, that's where we've got to leave it. We've got a limited time on the show. I'm going to talk with Jessica now in Nuclear, Colorado, USA. Are you there, Jessica?
I am.
Do you have a question I can answer for you, please, sweetie?
Yeah, it's a really weird one. I have a friend right now who is dying of cancer, and
Oh,
his
I'm sorry.
mother had a native shaman. I mean, it's life, but she had a Navajo shaman come bless him, and they had
Mhm.
mentioned that he had a question or something that wasn't answered, and that was like stopping him from. 'Cause he's just suffering right now, like he's holding on for something.
Right.
So I was just wondering if you could help with that at all.
I mean, that's interesting that his mum's brought in, a native person. Is there any sort of native history there with this person that's facing their own
I don't think,
mortality?
not that I know of. I think that she's just she was looking for some sort of answers. I'm not sure why she chose that.
Yeah, I mean, look, people do things that seem out of character or peculiar or strange at a time like this because they're looking or searching for answers or some sort of comfort or whatever. Look, I'm not going to
Right.
disagree with what the Native American person has said, but what I'm picking up is they're just not ready to go yet. No matter how sick
Yeah.
they are or how many times the doctors have said they've only got XYZ, time left, they're just not ready to give in yet. They're pretty stubborn in that way. They're just not ready to go. I don't know that they're waiting for anything in particular. It may just
Hmm.
be waiting for the fact that they're ready to sort of say, I'm going to exhale now and I'm going to depart. Like I don't think that there's any great magical message here. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like
I do. Yeah.
this person just doesn't feel that they're ready to let go yet. And that's okay. That's their choice. Like
But-
I have an unusual belief. I believe that there's an imaginary date stamped on our forehead that says when we're going to depart. And if that's ahead of the bus timetable, well, then maybe it's not his time.
Right.
I
Yeah.
also sort of feel that bringing this Native American person in was more for the mum than it was for him.
Oh, I agree. Yes, I
It was more
totally
to
agree.
give her comfort or something. You know what I mean? Like,
R-
comfort's probably not the right word, but to me, she got more out of it than the son did. And I think
Right.
maybe the message is more for her.
Ah, I gotcha. Okay.
Do you know
Yeah, he
what I
definitely
mean?
doesn't want to. He definitely doesn't want to go yet. But he's just like
No,
he's having such a hard time like breathing, and so I don't. It's like he's suffering a little bit. So yeah,
yeah, but
it's sad.
even though he is suffering, if he's not ready to let go, then nobody can force that. You know what I mean? You see people that
Yeah.
linger on way past their supposed date of expiration, and then other people get the news and bang, they're gone within a week. You know what I mean? And they were told they had 12 months to go or 2 years. So it's all about mental attitude and whether or not you're ready. And I mean, even though he might be having physical difficulties, that you and I'd look at it and say, oh, that's cruel, but maybe he's just not ready to say goodbye yet. It's
Right.
his choice. So
Right.
um, I look around your friend and I don't see anything there to me that's unresolved or waiting for anything or waiting for a particular person or waiting for an event. He's not. He's just being stubborn and says, I'm not ready to go. And that's his
Yeah.
choice. And I
Okay.
think that's beautiful. But he really does treasure your friendship. You know, you two sort of have had this amazing connection that he will never ever forget. And I know when his time does come that, he does fly with the angels, he will look at you as being one of the most prominent people in his life that he wants to sort of continue to guide. And that's a really beautiful
Oh,
thing.
that is really
You've
beautiful.
always been,
Thank you.
yeah, but you've always been honest with him. You've called it
You
as it
what?
is. You've always
Oh
been
yeah.
honest. You've had this very honest communication, haven't you, between the two of you?
Yep. Yep. And sometimes he didn't like that.
No, well, and sometimes I'm sure you didn't like it either, but you see what I mean?
Right.
That's what he's valued the most is that there's always been this honest communication with each other and that you've never tried to pull the wool over his eyes or paint the picture that isn't there. You've been open, you've been honest, you've listened to him, you've been there through his struggle with his cancer and all that sort of stuff. And, you've walked in and said, geez, you look like crap today, and he's appreciated that. And then other days you've walked in and said, gee, your eyes are sparkly. Do you know what I mean? Where everybody else has
Right.
danced around things. You've been the one constant in his life where you've been truthful, and he really appreciates that. Look, it's not my place to say when he's going to go. I just know it's not now. He's just not ready. But when he does, he'll tell you, and he'll say to you, you know, this might be our final time together. And, you know, as much as that's going to bring you to tears, and of course it will, but you know, then he's telling you that he's getting ready to go. So, you know, when
Right.
he comes to that point, it'll probably only be 48 hours. So, but he promised himself he'd always let you know when it was his time, and it's not his time yet.
Okay.
So, you know, like, tell him that, you know, maybe the message was more for his mum than it was for him, so that he can then stop racking his brains, you know, with what time he's got left and what energy he's got. There's nothing he's waiting for. He is at peace with himself. He's at
Yeah, I
peace
think
with
it's more
what's
his
going to
mom trying to answer that
Yeah,
question. So I think you're totally right up with that. Completely
yeah.
right.
And maybe you can tell him that, you know, that's the message that came through. It's more for his mum, and, you know, and that'll ease his mind too, that then he can sort of deal with that in whichever way that he sees fit, you know, to even if
Right.
he says something to his mum that's going to put her mind at ease, that's his choice then. But that's what they showed
Yeah.
me. It was more for her than it was for him. But you're an amazing friend, and he will never ever forget you. He'll always be by your side. And he just sort of feels that, you know, this was a very soul connection. And I don't mean a soul connection as you were meant to be lovers, but a soul connection as in friends, that you had the ultimate friendship together, and everything's good. So anyway, sweetie, that's where we're going to leave it. I hope that that's sort of been of help to you, and you can sort of give that message to him, and he can sort of then find some sort of peace out of that. So it's really, really interesting how spirit works, because every week, if you watch the show regularly, you know that I pick a song of the week, and I never know what it is. It just comes to me either as I'm doing the astrology for the show, or I go through my list of songs, or sometimes it's a song that's been going around in my head. And today I picked a song that nobody in the US will probably even know. Here in Australia, we know it because, you know, we have a competition, as you do, called Idol. We have Australian Idol, which started back here in 2003. And the person that came second in Idol that year was a gentleman by the name of Shannon Noll, and he's gone on to have an amazing musical career here in Australia. And I want to leave you with one of the songs from the show, and it's called Angels Brought Me Here. And I think that's very, very appropriate, particularly for Jessica that we were just talking to. And that's what I love about Spirit. It connects all the dots, brings everything together. So Angels Brought Me Here by Shannon Noll. So until next week, bye for now.